Hey Steelers Nation, in today's episode, we are going to break down what it would look like if we drafted a first round pick, what it would mean to the Steeler that they will be competing against for the spot on the field. In today's episode, it is going to be discussing wide receiver, and particularly the wide receiver who would be challenged for playing time is Diontae Johnson. I'm going to break down some evidence of where Diontae's at, whether or not it would make sense to draft this position. Is Diontae's argument to be the full-time starter on the field justified by what he does on the field? So to dive into the stats here, looking at the 2022, first off, it's Diontae's fifth season coming up. So we have a little bit of a track record on here, and we can see some evidence behind about what it is that he does and what it is that he is. So when we look at Diontae, he comes down from his 2021 season of having 1,100 yards to having less than 900 last year. Diontae Johnson's yardage basically declined at the same amount that his target rate and catch rate declined. He still is averaging roughly 10 yards per catch. In 2021, it was 10.9. In 2022, it was 10.3. But this is the bigger problem when we look at Diontae's game evolving and what happened last year compared to the previous amount of his career. First off, the catch percentage rate when the ball was thrown to him dropped below 60%. And 60% is kind of the magical number in the NFL for, well, competency. And if you're below that, it's a really big problem. When we look deeper into Diontae Johnson's stat, his average depth of target is 10.1 yards, which means when the ball, now that's not caught, that's target, but when the ball is thrown to him, he's on average 10.1 yards downfield. So when you think of that, that's pretty high A depth. That we like that. Downfield catching a ball, but less than half of his catches result in a first down. And when we look at what his average per catch is, it's 10.3 yards per catch, which means on average, Diontae Johnson, after he caught the ball for the entire season, only added 0.2 yards on top of his catch. On average, 0.2 yards is 7 inches. So when we look at that, that's the realistic amount of error that any line judge putting the ball down does. So after the catch, Diontae Johnson isn't really giving you anything. So let's dive a little bit deeper into why this would even be a consideration to draft a wide receiver in the first round. In each year that Diontae Johnson has been in the league, prior to last year, when the ball was thrown his way, there was an average quarterback rating of 90 or better. Last year, the QBR against, or the quarterback rating, not the QBR, against targets thrown at Diontae Johnson was 58.8. There is not a single quarterback in the NFL that has less than 70 and has started more than 2 games. He is worse when we throw the ball to Diontae Johnson than any of the Jets quarterbacks or any other quarterback in football. That cannot be overstated enough. Diontae Johnson was directly responsible for 6 interceptions this season as a result of either hitting his hands or him running the wrong route and stopping short. This is where we get into major problem town. It was different when he was bringing in the touchdowns. That did not happen last year. He had 0 of them. He was the only player targeted over 100 times not to have a touchdown, which is a big testament to the problem on film of Diontae Johnson's game. So with wide receivers, there are 2 ways you can get open. The first way is I can run faster than you off the line. I can come out of my breaks faster. I can jump higher. All of the athletic stuff that we want out of a good quality wide receiver. The second way is I just found a hole and I sat in it. And this is the on-field example of what Diontae Johnson is. He is the latter, which basically anyone can do. I find a hole and I sit here and I wait for the ball to come to me. It's evidence in the stats because basically where he catches the ball, he gets tackled. So he also has a drop rate of nearly 5%, meaning that very catchable ball doesn't count as a catch. We combine all of this, he's not adding value to the team. When he did all of his massive years in his first 2 years, catching the ball like crazy, it was predominantly because Ben wasn't able to put the ball downfield and really stretch it. Diontae was able to sit in a hole, Ben would give it to him on a short pass, and he would get all kinds of catches as a result. It wasn't a prominent way to build your offense then, and now that we have options that we don't need to do this, it's not a prominent way to build our offense now. So unless Diontae in his 5th year changes his entire style of getting open and not sitting in holes, all he's doing is becoming a useful tool for the defenses against us. In the 3rd quarter, after teams came out of the locker room, they created spots for Diontae to stop, and you can't blame Kenny. He's an open guy in a hole. I'm going to throw him the ball 3 yards short of the sticks, but since the defense was inviting you to throw the ball there, and Diontae doesn't increase value after having the ball, it was a punt factory. And that's really the number one problem with Diontae. He doesn't move the sticks at the rate that the ball was given to him. He is well below league average at this. So yes, he puts up fantasy numbers because he will get a ton of catches, but he doesn't give you value. So when I look at which draft spots could potentially beat out Diontae, maybe not in this year because of his contract, but certainly in the long run, 17 for sure. Probably going to beat him out this year. 32 likewise, and possibly even 50. And I believe that there's an opening for the 3rd round pick to be the long-term replacement for Diontae. So do we need to dive into the 1st round to get someone who can beat out Diontae? We could. We absolutely could. You'd probably get a huge stud to go opposite of George Pickens there. Will they? Yet to be seen, but that is why I made this argument about wide receiver. Because there's also rumors going around that Khan wants to do a big draft day splash. And I could easily see pairing Diontae Johnson with a 3rd round pick equaling a second half of the 1st round draft pick in return. Because if you're a team that needs to get a stable pass catcher added, I don't know, Dallas Cowboys might come to mind, that this guy catches the ball, it's a safety blanket, because he is that. He is a safety blanket that will get open because he'll just sit where he's open. He's a great mind for that. And that's an incredible skill. I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm just saying it's easier to do that than to get open out of your breaks like a CeeDee Lamb does. But there's a value for it. So if I'm a team in the latter half of the 1st round that I feel that I'm pretty much already stable, trading a 1st round pick and getting Diontae in a 3rd in return could make sense. And if that were the case and we're trading Diontae, you absolutely need to draft a stud wide receiver with that pick. Similar to what the Titans did last year when they traded A.J. Brown and then drafted Burke. Now, it's hard to evaluate that trade at this point because their quarterback kept getting hurt. But when you look at the situation of saying Diontae is the highest paid player on the offense and he doesn't produce like it, well, that's where questions start coming around. And when we look at this overall, the team being built moving forward, I do not believe that wide receiver is off of the realm of possibilities for any of those first 3 picks. And especially if Diontae's traded, it becomes a mandatory. But if he doesn't, I still see wide receiver on the board, and I also see it as the most potential first-round pick that goes on offense. And I kind of tip the hat because tomorrow we're going to be talking about what the cornerback position looks like as we talk about who will be fighting for that in the long term against the potential first-round pick. See you guys tomorrow, Steelers Nation, and here we go, Steelers. Here we go.